Hello, welcome to Film Seizure. This week we are talking about 1980's Superman 2, originally be directed by Richard Donner, but finished by Richard Lester.
The two dicks.
There's a lot of dicks. A lot of dicks in one Puzo.
And we are off
and running. So yeah, Superman 2. I'm Chuck Moore.
I'm Jason Oliver.
I am Jeff Arbuckle. This is another quarantine session because, as I said last week, I don't think this is ever going to end. We're going to need a Superman to turn back everything and take President Lex Luthor to jail. By the way, that was a real thing. Lex Luthor for a little while was president.
Comics.
Yeah, he was. Yep.
He went crazy and tried to kill Superman and Batman, and then warned everybody of a coming crisis, which led into Infinite Crisis.
Oh my goodness!
I can always bring it back to a crisis.
It's off and running on the crisis.
So in this movie, Superman fights three Kryptonians named John, Bon, and Jovi.
John, Bon, and Jovi.
Yep. Or Zod, Ursa, and Knob.
Winkin', Blinkin', and Nod.
Yeah. Inky, Blinky, Clyde.
Yep. Seriously, I'm going to call him Knob this whole
Knob.
Knob.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can just say that you had a stuffed up nose.
Knob.
Anyway,
So go ahead.
No, Superman 2. So this was filmed concurrently with Superman 1, although Richard Donner got fired because he and the Salkinds, Ilya and Alexander Salkind, did not get along.
And Donner liked to spend the monies also.
Yeah, and Donner really did not get along with Pierre Spengler, who was a producer on the film as well. And as I said last week, at one point he was even willing to kill Pierre Spengler if he came across him while filming the movies.
Imagine if Peckinpah had been the director of Superman. He actually probably would have killed someone.
Probably.
I think he actually brandished a weapon at an ery interview meeting with the producers.
That's hilarious.
Yep.
This is my Superman right here. Anyway, so they didn't really get along very well, but he had shot about 75% of Superman 2. He was told that he had to stop shooting Superman 2 to finish Superman 1 because the first Superman movie was 6 months late to be released. That was a very common thing in the 70s. And in fact, the last time I ever remember anything being that late without either uncertain if they're ever really going to release it or just because of, pandemic problems. But like the only time I remember where it's like, well, the movie's just late to finish is Titanic.
Oh, huh.
Yeah, remember that? Like it was supposed to come out the summer of '97, but it wasn't done.
That just doesn't happen anymore.
No, it's like you got to finish the freaking movie.
Yeah.
Look at again with the Marvel movies; they know exactly what dates the movie's coming out. Superman 2 actually finished, went to the editors in October of '78 to be released on December 15th of '78. That's that was also very common back then. It was like just barely making it.
I wonder, have they actually set release dates for the Avatar movies or for Avatar 2? Because
there's no release dates ever again for anything ever.
That's true. We're never going to get another movie.
No, it's over. Yeah. We're only going to be able to watch old movies now, people.
Yep. They're all oldies now, folks.
Get used to it. But no, so I don't know if they did or not.
Because I kind of feel like Avatar 2 is sort of like that as well, but maybe not. Maybe it's just a matter of, we'll release them when we release them, because apparently they think that people are waiting with bated breath to see them.
Jason, we got to remember, we get in trouble whenever we bring up Avatar.
I know.
Anyway,
It's a sore subject for me.
yeah, it really is. Although it still has one of the funniest moments I've ever seen in any movie. Anyway,
Unintentional humor.
well, maybe
In big blockbuster movies is always funny.
yes. So anyway, and it doesn't involve a dummy falling off of a building either.
This movie has a dummy though.
It sure does. What non?
Yeah, it's got 3 dummies then because you got Ned Beatty too.
Yes, that's true. So
And
yeah,
then you have a dummy being thrown off the ledge at the Niagara Falls.
a kid dummy.
Yes.
That's even better. So I do like one thing that this. Well, let me go back to the Richard Donner got fired. Richard Lester took over. Richard Lester had done the Three Musketeers and the Four Musketeers for the Salkinds and Pierre Spangler in the past, and was just kind of slipped right in. And he made some reshoots. Donner gets no credit from. I can't imagine how the Directors Guild passed that, because I mean they would have to assume, like, did Donner just not fight it, or was he paid off not to fight it?
It is weird. I don't know how many people in the Directors Guild know the people in the Writers Guild, but apparently the Writers Guild was pissed at Donner for giving Mankiewicz the special consultant credit.
Yes.
So I don't know if there were politics there or what, but yeah, I agree. I mean, you shoot 75% of something, you should have credit. Yeah.
I can't imagine that flying today.
No fucking way.
But so it might have been a political thing.
They could have paid him off. I'm sure there was a financial arrangement.
Now, what's really interesting, though, is that how Donner was fired was via telegram.
Wow.
Your services are no longer required, thanks.
Things that will never happen today.
No. Well, they might happen today.
By email.
Yeah, people get fired by email.
Yeah, email or text today. Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Get fired by telegram now, you're at the wrong job anyway.
I am a singing telegram.
I think I think it'd be funny to break up with a girlfriend through a singing telegram or through a telegram in general. Just you send the Western Union guy out there.
Or a saxogram.
Look, I have to tell you an aside here because my good friend Jeff Bowe once broke up with his girlfriend by telling her dad over the phone he didn't want to go out with her anymore.
Oh no, that's
my
funny.
favorite breakup story of all time. He's such an asshole.
How old was he?
We were probably in our late teens, so probably 18, 17, 18.
That's bad.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
I'm going to throw another friend under the bus because he once gave his girlfriend a teddy bear for Valentine's Day that had a love note to him on the tag from another girlfriend.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
They were Supermen in my eyes back then.
Man, that's too much. That's funny.
Sorry, I just had to tell those.
Jeff,
That's
I'm surprised. Hilarious. I'm surprised you haven't mentioned yet that Richard Lester directed Batman, Jesus Christ, Beatles movies.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
So Richard Lester comes from a more of a comedic background, or a little bit like he did make the Musketeer movies, which I mean they're a little bit more lighthearted.
They certainly are. They're very humor filled. Yeah,
and certainly you see that in this movie, and you see that in next week's movie to its detriment.
Oh yes.
It's not so bad in this one, though I do think as an older viewer, it is a little weird. But so yeah, Richard Lester, he did make A Hard Day's Night and Help.
Yeah.
Both of those movies are very different, but very fun. But Help is just a phenomenal movie. Really showcasing, I think, even better than Hard Day's Night, like the various personalities of the Beatles. But yeah, so he made a lot of popular, good movies. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the idea of Richard Lester making a Superman movie.
No.
That would be, I mean, if I was going to say if Seth Rogen wanted to make a superhero movie, no problem with that, but he did. And, but like,
Wait, what?
yeah, Seth Rogen made Green Hornet, yeah.
Oh, a superhero movie, not a
Yeah.
Superman movie. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but like, if
Green Hornet is not a bad movie.
no, it's not that bad, but it's not that great either.
I wish I had seen it in 3D. Did you see it in 3D?
I doubt it.
I wish I had.
Yeah,
that was Michel Gondry. I'm going to go off on a tangent here. Michel Gondry made that movie, and I saw it on DVD in 2D, and you could tell the 3D was going to be fucking spectacular, and I'm really bummed I didn't see it.
I don't think I saw it in 3D, but I didn't hate that movie. But it's not, But what I was trying to get at was like if what's the guy who made like 40-Year-Old Virgin and those
Judd Apatow.
If Judd Apatow wanted to make a superhero movie and it be a little bit of fun to it, no problem. I got no problem with that idea.
He would have been a good choice for Ant-Man.
Sure. Yeah. But I mean, like that's what we're dealing with Richard Lester. I don't think anybody had any. I mean, like Superman should transcend the person making the movie. Now,
right?
It can make a bad Superman movie, and we've got some coming. But
and when 75% of the movie's already shot.
Yeah, I feel like all you have to do is land the plane.
Right.
At this point,
and Superman is one of the engines.
Mm-hmm. Yes, just fly,
literally.
Just fly.
Just fly. So that's what we've got here, and this is a really, really good sequel because it really does the right things to further the characters. I think. Now that you've gotten the introductions out of the way, I think, you can explore that relationship between Lois and Clark and Lois and Superman a little bit more.
And you've also already introduced your villains.
You've already introduced your villains. You already know that General Zod's a bad, bad dude. And Terrence Stamp is awesome.
Yes.
Oh, he is awesome.
He's my favorite. He's my favorite part of this movie, I think.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. But yeah, so I mean, like the stage is already set for you. You can just run with it. This is kind of like, like Empire Strikes Back. You don't need to know anybody new other than Yoda. Like they introduced Boba Fett. Everybody freaking loves Boba Fett, but he's not a very good character.
No,
he doesn't do anything.
I mean,
Yoda does a lot of things.
A bounty hunter. He just looks cool.
Yeah, he looks cool, and Yoda does things, and that's the only person you need to get to know. Everything else is already laid out for you. So it's that's when you get that really good sequel type stuff. I mean, like we talked about this a little bit while these were being screened, but like Spider-Man 2, it's a perfect exploration of the character beyond their origin, beyond their breakout. Now you get to know a lot more about them. And that's why that movie excels the way it does. And it also has an added bonus that, even though this doesn't really apply to Superman 2, but Spider-Man 2 has the added bonus of a relatively sympathetic villain. Or at least a villain trying to do something and something goes wrong.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I mean, so when you can do things like that, you can make a pretty good sequel that does more than just do the same thing over again.
We had an offline discussion that there was a perception that Superman 2 was considered the greatest Superman movie of all time.
Superhero movie, right?
Superhero movie of all time potentially until like a Spider-Man 2 or an X2 or a Dark Knight came along. Is that really true? Did people hold this movie in more well regard than the first one?
Yes and no.
This one didn't make as much money.
It didn't. Sequels back then though didn't. I mean, Empire Strikes Back made the least out of the original trilogy. Actually, the least out of all the Star Wars movies, I think.
That's wild.
and it's the best. But it's, sequels did not usually do very well until later. There were people who said that I think characterization wise, this movie succeeds further beyond what the first one did. And therefore it's an easier, more enjoyable watch because you don't have to go through the pedantic parts of introducing a character and bringing the character origin to the screen and everything.
I think in general, that's why sequels to superhero movies work better than the first. That's why Dark Knight is better than Batman Begins. It's why X2, Superman 2 are better than the first.
Yeah, probably, because also oftentimes with those first ones, they kind of hedge their bets a little bit, and they don't get, like, X-Men looks cheap next to X2.
Oh, well, yeah, because you're absolutely right. It's like,
we hedge their bets.
We've got something. Now we can put a little bit more money into it and feel confident that we'll get it back. Yeah.
And
we're able to raise the stakes both in the story, but also in the budget.
Right, and also Coca-Cola and Marlboro are willing to give you money to make
I was so going to mention this.
Yeah.
Yes. And Kentucky Fried Chicken. All in the same goddamn scene.
Oh, boy, Kentucky Fried Chicken is all over this movie.
Marlboro truck. Holy shit, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's product placement perfection right there.
Isn't there a Marlboro billboard also?
There might have been. There's definitely a big, huge Coca-Cola billboard.
Well, yeah, because he throws one of the guys into it.
Knob.
Yeah. It's one of them. Yeah, because he spins.
It might be
around.
Zod, actually.
I think it's Zod. Yeah.
But that's way in the future.
Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah, that's way in the future of about 20 minutes from now. So I mean, like, sequels. It's hard to say because, like, I think some people really took negatively to the lighter-hearted stuff, particularly in that big showdown. Some of that is very glaring today, where it's like, why are we focusing on these people being blown away in very comical ways? Why aren't we just showing them, like, actually getting hurt and stuff instead? Although there is one moment in that big showdown when we get to it that it gets a little too realistic for me, and kind of in a comedic way. Not in the movie. The movie's not comedic about it, but the way I look at it is kind of comedic because it's very realistic. But anyway, so I don't know. Like, there are some people who will say Superman 2 is far superior to the first one, probably because it is a little bit more action-packed. Or at least it gets to the point faster.
I mean, I mentioned this last week, but I don't feel that way anymore. I don't
really either.
I think the first one is a better movie. For a lot of reasons.
It's a better piece of art at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but for me, I mentioned this last week. For me, they are one movie.
Right. Yeah.
I don't really like one or the other better than the other.
That's an acceptable answer for sure.
That's fair. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because this one, to the exception of Infinity War and Endgame, this one really does feel like one movie, whereas all the other superhero movies feel like sequels.
Yeah, until maybe Batman Begins and Dark Knight. Those feel kind of fluid. Ra's al Ghul sticks around through all three films in a way. But
I will say that there is more of a definitive break from one movie to the next, but that doesn't necessarily. I think some of that connective tissue is how they finished the first movie, where it's like, hey, check out this playing card that we got. But then
it's not one arc so much as these two are one arc.
I think to me 2 and 3 feel a little more fluid than 1 and 2 on the Batmans, and I think it's because of, again, that break. It's like when we get into Batman 2, Dark Knight Rises, it's more day in the life at that point, right? And the same with the third one.
So Superman, how do these villains get released anyways? What Superman doing his throwing bombs into space routine?
There's
so much plot convenience in this movie.
Yes,
kind of what makes it charming too.
But remember, the plot convenience is built around how they changed the end of Superman 1
Right.
Because Superman 2, remember in Superman 1, he flies that one missile out in the space that was headed for Hackensack.
Yep.
And that is what explodes and releases the Kryptonian criminals. They are released at the end of 1 in Donner's vision.
That honestly, they should have kept that.
They should have, but then they didn't. But the problem was they didn't really have a way to finish the first one anyway. Yeah. And it's like, let's just rearrange stuff, and it just so much happened that moved to 2. But anyway, but in this movie, we open with, first of all, the credits give us a little recap of the first movie. I always like that. Spider-Man 2 does the exact same thing. So
yeah, it does, doesn't it?
It does.
When I was talking to Susan about that when we were watching it, I was kind of saying, yeah, they have to kind of do this because a lot of these people who are seeing Superman 2 haven't seen Superman since they saw it in the theater, right? They didn't see it on VHS. They're actually getting to see all that happen.
They maybe
the second time.
They maybe didn't even get to see Superman.
Right.
I mean, who knows?
Too. Right.
That was a really good use of time. They didn't waste actual movie time with it.
Right. There's nobody walking into a scene and it's like, hey, Chief, remember all this stuff that happened the other day? And then recapping the first movie. Yeah.
Right.
So we open with Clark Kent just trying to say hi to people at work, and he's just getting like, later, Clark. Yeah, whatever, Clark. See you later, Clark. He's just getting so ignored, poor guy. But he goes into Perry's office, and I like this because Jackie Cooper, first of all, he's just really good as Perry White. But he's he's like trying to figure out what the headline's going to be for when the terrorists blow up France.
Right.
Which is, that's just, he's wanting to sell newspapers. It seems crass, but he's got his job to do.
He has a line here that kills me.
There are a couple of lines here that kill me, but
my favorite is if Paris goes kablooey, I want my best reporter in the middle of it.
Right. Yeah. Yep. And I'm sorry, Clark, but that's Lois Lane.
Yeah.
The other thing he says at one point is he's talking about how these people have stolen a nuclear bomb. And they're holding Paris ransom or whatever. And Clark Kent's like, well, that's terrible. And he's like, well, that's why they're called terrorists, Clark. But the other thing he's talking about there, because it's like Clark is like, hey, you sent Lois there? I mean, like, isn't that dangerous? Isn't that, couldn't she get killed or whatever? And he's talking about how dangerous part of the job,
Right.
Which he gets himself into trouble later, because the criminals show up at the Daily Planet to bring Superman out, and that's really Lex Luthor's role in this movie, is to say, hey, his girlfriend works at that place.
Right.
Yeah, right. But anyway. So in a way, it kind of sets the tone for later that there's, that Perry White is going to be, kind of eating his own words by saying, it's like sometimes part of the job is the danger or whatever.
Right.
So Lois Lane gets past the French police cop guy. It's kind of clever too, where she's trying to figure out how to talk to him, so she pulls out a little book and she tells him what she's looking for. So he starts going through the book and she just slips around, like behind him. That's hard-boiled journalism right there.
That's a classic move, right?
That's a classic move, sneaking around the French cop guy. So she gets up into, she puts herself at the bottom of an elevator. And the terrorists have the bomb all the way at the top. And it's actually also in the elevator, but they're sending the hostages out because, as the terrorist says, like, once we prime the bomb, it doesn't matter. They're going to pay us whatever we want. So go ahead and prime the bomb. We'll prove to them that it's primed. They'll pay us. We didn't need those hostages anyway. It was just a nice way to see if we could get it without priming the bomb. Well, something goofs up. Somebody cuts the wrong cable, and it sends the elevator careening to the bottom, and it also sets the bomb to go off. Oops.
Yep.
These terrorists are dummies. And so Superman arrives just in time. He saves Lois by not making sure that she doesn't get crushed by the elevator.
This is your floor.
This is your floor. I believe this is your floor. Then he's got some good lines in this movie too, Superman. One of my favorites later. But she's like, oh, the bomb. He's like, I know. Just let me drink you in with my eyes for a minute, and then I'm going to take off with the bomb. Right. Throws the bomb out into space. He throws a lot of bombs into space in this series, by the way.
Yes, he does.
Sure does. He throws all the bombs into space in the fourth one.
Yeah, he does. And then he throws that into the sun.
That's his arc, is to get good at throwing bombs out into space.
So then the bomb goes off, and then we find out that his mom tells him, it's like, yeah, these criminals are in the Phantom Zone. That's a bad place. It's a terrible place to be. Your father created it, and he's, he racks his brain every night on whether or not it's the right thing to do. But by the way, a shockwave from a nuclear weapon
is the only thing.
Shatter. Yeah, it's the only thing that will shatter. Oopsies. That's a reshot scene, by the way. Any scene in which he's Clark or Superman is in the Fortress of Solitude, he was originally speaking to Marlon Brando. They did not want to give Marlon Brando any money.
Yep.
So they took him out. I can't imagine that would fucking fly with the Actors Guild. You sign a contract.
Right. I'm not sure, because again, they signed a contract for one movie. I'm not sure it was for two.
Well,
I'm not sure the particulars on that, but yes, there was some funny stuff. They didn't want to pay him the 11.75% for Superman 2, which he had already said, hey, Superman 2, I get that money too, right? If I'm in that movie. And they're like, oh yeah, you're not in this movie.
So they replaced him with Susanna York, which is, she looks just like Brando. She plays a pretty good Jor-El. No, she plays Lara, the mom of Superman. So she was in the first one. But so the only thing that's going to bust this shit up is a nuclear, shockwave. Oh, glad there hasn't been any of those around here lately. They get out, and these guys instantly know how to use their powers. That is one thing I will give credit to Zack Snyder and his Man of Steel. When Zod and all of those people come to Earth and they have that fucking freak out of all the senses expanding.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Because that's a good point. It's these people these people are going to be inundated with all of these new powers, and they're not going to know what to do with them.
I really like that scene on the moon, though, with them.
Yes, I do too.
What's
this Houston?
Man,
and those astronauts, they die terrible, terrible deaths.
They do. It's fucking scary. Actually.
It is. It's really scary. Yep.
It's a horror scene.
Mm-hmm.
And also what I like about that is that really in just 30 seconds or so, you see that they don't give a fuck about life.
Mm-hmm. Nope.
Ursa just rips that guy's fucking insignia off, which decompresses his suit, and he's dying horribly, and she's just kind of smiling.
Her fascination with insignia is interesting too, because she does that later with the sheriff's badge.
Yeah, she takes everything from people. Mm-hmm. The only thing she doesn't take is the general's 4 stars, which Zod takes himself.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's a nice little character thing, because I think she is so committed to a general, and therefore of rank and insignia, probably. Yeah. And everything on Krypton was an insignia. It was also we talked about Mankiewicz in the first movie. He was the one who came up with the idea that every Kryptonian house would have their own symbol, which became part of the comics too.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So they're brutal in that scene.
Also, they kind of mirror Luthor and his flunkies, right? A little bit.
A little bit. You got the big dumb guy.
Yeah.
You've got the eye candy,
Mm-hmm.
and then you got Terrence Stamp,
Yeah.
who is a fucking madman.
Yes.
Awesome. He's so awesome.
He is awesome.
So they so they're going to head to Earth now. Meanwhile, Clark back in Metropolis, he's like he's a little jealous of Superman.
And there's two things in this scene too that I want to touch on, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
When he's walking behind Lois Lane, I'm trying to talk to her, and she swings the door closed in his face, and he knocks like he wasn't with her already.
Yeah.
It's just like a charming Clark moment. But she struggles next with trying to get orange juice out of her oranges, which I think is a really cool thing, because Clark does it for her, and he looks at the juice that he gets out of it as very little.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like representing, this is my relationship with Lois. I'm squeezing as hard as I can, but I'm getting nothing in return as Clark Kent. That's a really cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, my note on this was that he gets friend zoned hard, like real hard in that scene. And she's like flat out, it's like, dude, you can't compete with Soups.
Yeah, and this is where,
Well,
when we get into the more romantic elements of their relationship and some of the message of this movie is where I start to really not like this movie as much.
I know where you're going.
Yeah,
we're
getting there. We're not there yet, but we're getting there.
Well, there is a little bit of there is that helps. That does help set a tone, though, for the Superman character too, though, because he does have to struggle with what he really actually is and how people react to him, right?
But I wish that Lois had fallen in love with Clark.
Well, I think, that's one of that is a tricky thing, right? Because
Superman is more what Clark really is than Clark
exactly.
is.
That's
exactly. Fair. Superman is who he is. He just has to wear a disguise. Now, that's why
I feel like in the comics,
disguise,
she does fall in love with Clark, doesn't she?
No, not
in
until
some versions.
No, not until after he told. They weren't gonna. They got. He proposes to her after she knew he was Superman.
Okay.
So she was marrying Superman the whole time. But that's the thing. It's like he really is Superman.
Yeah.
The person that he's wearing, the skin that he's wearing, is just a disguise. The person he really is. Because that's the big thing with Superman that I think a lot of times it gets lost because we see characters like Spider-Man where Spider-Man isn't really Spider-Man. He's really Peter Parker.
Yeah.
It's more important. I mean, Peter Parker does more interesting things than Spider-Man. Spider-Man does the more heroic things. It's the inverse with the DC.
And I think that becomes a problem with this movie for me because when he does, we're getting there, but when he does give up his powers, he feels like he's less of a person. You can see her disappointment in him romantically, and it just kind of creates this messaging of this importance of strength and power that I don't really like.
I read that slightly differently, and that was something I did make a note of because I think it more asks a question as opposed to sets or gives an answer, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But we'll get to it. We'll get to that. But anyway, so
we got to go to my hometown first.
Yeah,
yes,
so
we do.
So why
guns.
why are they sent to your hometown, Chuck?
Oh, geez. Why do they go to Niagara Falls? They have to follow some stupid story.
There's there's a ring of criminals who are preying upon
newlyweds. Yeah,
Newlyweds, yeah.
it's the whole. It's a souvenir guy, or it's a souvenir.
I really
scam.
wish actually that plot line played out.
Yes,
Yeah.
like just like randomly at the end of the movie,
Something
like
yeah.
Superman brings the fucking ring of criminals to the fucking to jail or something. But
It
yeah,
really
there's
does create this great thing where they're staying in the honeymoon suite.
right. The guy who's showing them around, I think, is part of the racket. I think what they're in is part of the racket. Like,
Right.
basically, because like they're constantly is like Clark is playing it very innocently, where he's like, "Oh, look at all this stuff that's complimentary," and she's like, "Yeah, complimentary until you see the bill."
Until you get the bill, yeah.
And that's the cynicism. That's also the reality of it too, right? Like
The guy who plays the bellhop
yeah.
kills me. That's a great performance.
like he is
Yes.
almost. He almost needs to be like, so this is where you do the, like you expect him to be that type of like just scuzzy kind of like, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
but like her cynicism is what like is actually valid in this circumstance, right? Because these people are trying to make things seem they're selling. What am I trying? They're trying to sell romance to people who don't need any extra romance.
Right.
And the room is gaudy as fuck. It's pink carpet. It's a pink bear on and she's like, "Ooh, look, it's real polyester."
Yeah, that is hilarious.
So like they're selling this ideology of, isn't it more romantic if you have all of this extra shit? But that's the scam.
But that's also the tourist trap that is Niagara Falls, right? I mean,
Exactly.
That's where people used to go to honeymoon, right?
That's my hometown, baby.
Yeah.
And so Chuck, you can speak to so are there lots of honeymoons scams there?
I'm sure there were.
I mean, the whole business is probably a scam, but yeah.
It's interesting because you have this really phenomenal waterfall that's just amazing.
Well, it's one of the 7 wonders of the world.
It's the real attraction.
Yeah.
But everything around it needs to make money off it.
Right.
But is not the attraction.
Right.
So you had all these hotels and stuff that people would pay a lot of money to be at just to see the falls.
Well, it's like going to the Indy 500 and walking to the track. There's a lot of bullshit around that track that costs way too much money for the bullshit that they are. Yeah, it's like, here, buy these $20 cushions. That's only different from the $4 cushions because it's got a checkered pattern on it. Check flag pattern.
And because you forgot you would need one or didn't know you would need one, now we're going to gouge you for it.
Exactly. It's like buy these $4 earplugs. Well, an entire pack of 12 earplugs is $4 at the store. So yeah, it's stuff like that. It's all the bullshit that leeches around the attraction. Yeah.
But one of my favorite shots, and it gave me chills, maybe it's because I'm from there, but when they first show the falls in this movie, it's so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Like just the fall shot from above. And then when they go down to the ground, it loses a little bit of its luster a little bit. It's the idea of, it's the falls are what you're there for, but once you're like right there at street level, and they got all that bullshit around it, Right. There's a circus centered around it. But that scene
hot dogs and orange juice, greatest combination of food ever.
Hot dogs and orange,
freshly squeezed.
And then there's a little bit of convenient, like very convenient here, how Lois realizes when Superman's there, Clark isn't.
Well, because it's like, because there's an idiot kid. And Clark's got to go get them hot dogs.
But he really was somewhere else.
I love how he plays that, though. She's so sure, and she's right. But yet he's like, I'm going to save her life, but as Clark.
Oh, that's later at the river. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's...
but that's what happens next, because she realizes, the kid that went off the side that was saved, Superman came out of nowhere. And also, to be seen.
And also, like, basically, like, straight armed her. It's like, hey, Superman, what's up? It's like, bye.
I gotta go get them hot dogs, girl.
Ooh, look, hot dog stand.
Yeah,
flies off. Yeah.
Forgot the orange juice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
He's
know,
really funny in that scene.
yeah, he really is. But yeah, so then she's like, so yeah, where were you at, buddy? And he's like, well, I was going to get the hot dogs. And then they go down to the river, and she's like, I am so sure, and it's like, if you're not Superman, then, well,
You have a great story.
you have a great story. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she fucking chucks it to the river. And so he just uses his little heat vision to snap a log down.
In reality, she would have died real quick in that scene.
Probably. Those are rapids.
Really quick.
Yeah, she would have died real fast.
Yeah, there would have. I mean, that's the thing about rapids. They have pretty powerful undertows.
Yeah, the way she stayed above water was a little bit not realistic.
Well, she was kind of wearing parachute pants. I mean, those were pretty.
You think that's what saved her?
Maybe. I think those filled up with water, and now she's buoyant.
My favorite part of this scene is when she's getting out of the water, and Clark goes to help her, and then he purposely falls into the water.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, and then she, of course, she feels stupid. Which I mean, but at the same time, Clark is still he that's the thing about this that I think I read into the idea that Clark is just Superman is desperate to be normal like Clark Kent, despite knowing that he isn't. And, he just wants to be Clark Kent.
Yeah.
But because he can't, then he, he's really, he's stuck because she is in love with him.
Hold on, guys. I gotta.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, he's gone. But you see what I'm saying, though, Chuck? You have somebody who is, the person you are is the person that the person you love is in love with, but there's no way for that to really work.
Well, it's interesting that he feels the same way in some respects that Jason did, that he wants Lois to fall in love with this aspect of him that's not really true.
Sure.
Which is Clark Kent. He would rather her fall in love with not the majestic Superman. He wants her to fall in love with the other guy himself, which is kind of weird.
Which is weird because the thing is that he has it as inverted as a lot of other people invert those characters. That he is thinking of himself. He's starting to buy into the idea that he's Clark Kent, but he's not. He's Superman. He's Kal-El.
Right.
And that's not Clark Kent.
And he gets a harsh reminder of that coming up here, of what he should be and is versus what he wants to be.
Exactly. So this is where he trips over the bear head, which was set up. There's the fucking polyester bear there. He trips, his glasses fall into the fire, and he rushes, he grabs them so that, she doesn't see him without his glasses. But then she knows that he has to be burnt because he just stuck his hand into the fire like a big old dummy. And she realizes there's no burn. So, you are Superman.
Really are Superman.
Yes. So he's like, we can't talk here because our boss is going to call us, and I'm going to be really bummed out if I got blue balls because he calls us. Let's go. let's go to my fuck pad up north.
Let's go to my place, the Fortress of Bangitude.
Yes, exactly. So he goes up there. He takes her up there, and he's like, "Yeah, this is where it's like, oh, this is where you live. No, I actually live a couple blocks from you." That's, yikes. No, this is just where I come to do my meditation and fuck bitches. And she's like, "Oh, this is neat." And then she's starting to realize that she's in over her head with Superman.
Right.
It's all over her face at this point. And he's like, so, hey, I'm going to go take off to the southern hemisphere and pick up some fucking parrots and flowers and shit for our dinner and groceries. I'm going to go to the grocery store. Can you imagine Superman walking into like the fucking IGA or something? Buying some lasagna noodles or something.
Yep.
Yeah. So he goes and he gets he gets those supplies, and he's going to cook dinner for her. Now, meanwhile, it's really important because of later a really kind of haunting line that he says. Meanwhile, while he's dining and romancing Lois, Zod and the gang have landed on Earth, and they've messed up their they messed up where they were supposed to be. They're going to Houston, but they end up in East Houston, Idaho.
Yep, Planet Houston.
Planet Houston. Yeah,
cracks me up.
And so they are gonna like wreck this town up pretty much because hey, it's a whole planet for us to finally rule. Because Zod, as far as I've ever known, I don't think Zod ever disbelieved Jor-El that the place was going to blow up.
I don't know.
In fact, there have been readings or versions of that origin story where Zod's like, yeah, I'm raging against this council because they are dumb idiots who don't listen to outsiders when they present problems.
He's just going about it the wrong way.
He's going about it the wrong way, yeah.
Right, and Jor-El does take up that mantle,
yeah.
Right? Assuming like the kind of appropriate way to do it.
Right, exactly. So anyway, so they've landed now, and they're it's like they're messing up they're messing up the Earth a little bit. I like when they land and they realize they can walk on water.
Yep.
And I think there's like a fisherman there or something who's like, and it's like, oh my God, Jesus came.
Yep.
Jesus in the form of Terrence Stamp. Anyway, so they, it's like they get to East Houston, Idaho, and they blow up the whole place, and the army comes, and they're trying to blow up them, and of course that doesn't work. I like when Non catches the fucking bazooka rocket.
Yeah, it's like a callback to Clark catching the bullet in a way. Like these people are just as strong as him, and they're terrifying because they don't give a shit about human life.
Right. They just want to rule it. So then, all the while, Clark is back at the Fortress of Solitude. He's Lois has gone off to change into her very, very sexy full body gown. So it is a little see through, but there's a scene that I think is shot by Donner that's a lot sexier. She's wearing Superman's shirt, and that's all she's wearing. It's like, oh yeah, they've already fucked. Now he's talking to Jor-El about giving up his powers.
So forgive me. We have a bit of a thunderstorm happening here, and I had to run go take care of something. But have we gotten to the point in the story here where he has given up his powers, or no?
No, we're
going there right now.
Yeah, we're leading up to that. The main thing that you missed was that it's pretty clear the moment that they get to the Fortress of Solitude that Lois is a little out of, like, she's realized she's maybe a little in over her head with Superman. Mm-hmm. It's kind of all over her face, and she really is kind of projecting it when he's talking to his mom about giving up his powers. This is a lot of
alien shit, yeah.
And also, he's giving up everything he is to be with her, and that's a lot on her. Yeah, it's a lot on her plate.
I have to ask this question real quickly because it escapes me. What is the supposed consequence of Superman trying to be with Lois and still having his power?
So I don't get it. The joke, the Kevin Smith joke, has always been that they wouldn't be able to have sex, right? Because his ejaculate would be like a loaded gun going off.
It would be like a shotgun blast through her back.
Yeah. So to me, it's always, I think you have to read between the lines a little bit that it's physical love. Like they wouldn't be able to have sex unless he were to give up his powers, which I think there's some truth to that. Just Kevin Smith being Kevin Smith tells it a little more crudely.
Well, yeah, he tells it, yeah.
But I agree. I don't think it has to be that way, and I think it's kind of dumb. In the comics, they get around that pretty easily. So I don't really understand why.
It's well.
I would have preferred if Luthor had somehow tricked Superman into that chamber or something, like a way of getting him to lose his powers, and that being more of the device there.
And then that's how he knows what it is at the end instead of Clark Kent.
Right? Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Well, this is where I think the question arises, where Superman has okay, so I'm trying to figure out how I was thinking about this the other night when I was watching this. So there is this kind of idea that I think is kind of furthered here, where partly they may have wanted him to not necessarily like, don't you realize what your purpose is?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Jor-El says, you know, I've sent you there to lead these people towards their inevitable rightful places.
And even his adopted dad says, you're
here
for great
for
things.
You were here for a purpose.
Yeah.
And so now they're saying to him, are you giving up your purpose just for one person when you're meant to be for everyone?
Right.
And he is kind of bucking against that, saying, well, what's the point in being anything if I can't have the things that everybody else normally has? And so there is this kind of idea of the, in a way, I kind of look at this, you know how people really don't like the idea that England still has monarchs, that they get to do shit for nothing and they're paid to be there, and they are kind of granted this power that they not earned.
Right.
They just are born into the power. And how I'm guessing at some point, maybe not in our lifetime, but Chuck, I wouldn't be surprised in your kid's lifetime if eventually there is a monarch in that Windsor family who just says, no, we're done. I'm giving it all back to England and we're done.
Well, it's already moving in that direction.
Right. But
with Harry and everything, right? I mean,
right.
Yeah.
Although his brother, I think, does not share those same feelings. But
well, of course, he's the one who's
he's the next in line. Yeah.
Second in line. Yeah.
Right. But anyway, he's, but I think it's that idea where it's like, I don't really want to have this power just given to me without and expected to live a certain way that it's not really my way of life. And I think that that's where you kind of get into this idea of that granted power versus the power that you are responsible for, if that makes sense.
I think I get you.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so there is an interesting and kind of a difficult read here, because I think it's a read that people can have, the people can have different perspectives on. And I think that's, and I think Jason may be lost because of this storm that's going on, because it's pretty stormy down here too. But we can bring him back in when he gets back. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of different ways to read this whole Superman giving up his powers. Is he just giving it up so that he can be with the woman that he loves? Is he giving it up because he, in some ways, is feeling the pressure of being that Superman that is supposed to be shepherding this?
I think if they were going to go that route, they should have. I don't know. It's not like when he saved the kid at the falls that he showed any kind of lack of enjoyment in being Superman. You know,
right.
he still seemed to be enjoying that hero aspect of his life. So I think maybe in a modern movie they would have shown him struggle with it more than he had. But I get where you're coming from. I can see that. I think the movie maybe didn't handle it appropriately enough to make it believable.
Yeah, I mean, and that could be part of what was maybe lost in the what was lost in the change of director too.
Like Donner might have done a better job of that, or yeah.
Right. And I think that the way that the first two movies were, I think the way that the first two movies were formatted originally, I think he does handle that a little bit differently. But yeah, I don't know. I think this is a part that is kind of contentious because, when we kind of compared this a little bit to Spider-Man 2 a little bit, where Spider-Man 2 is, in that he's struggling with his powers too, but he's struggling with the responsibility, not so much, and reconciling that responsibility with his, with normal life, and that's causing a blight. I mean, in a way, it's sort of a. I think they also kind of could read that as a little bit of. It's a little bit of a sexual performance kind of code too, right?
Yeah.
But he is struggling with who he is versus what his responsibility that's been given to him that he didn't really ask for, but now he has to adhere to.
Right. It's a very big expectation for him.
Yeah.
And I get that. A little behind the scenes here, much like Superman giving his powers away. Jason has lost his powers. Yeah. So he'll be gone for a couple minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so at this point, he's given up his power, and it does not take very long before he tries to reconcile being Clark Kent and being the person that he was, which was Superman, by saying to the trucker when they're at the diner that, hey, you're sitting in my seat, because he's like instantly hitting on Lois. Yeah,
it's like the first time he gets to respond to a situation as a human, and he stands up to this trucker. It seems like he expects to be a stronger person, even though he's given up his power, but in fact, he's not.
He's stronger by way of his morality or something like that.
Right. And which he didn't have to give up. He didn't give up his great love of humans. He didn't give up any of that, just his abilities.
His physical strength, but his morality is not the same.
Right.
And so he gets roughed up by the trucker, who, by the way,
he immediately gets his ass handed to him.
Yeah.
And then he starts to cry like a little bitch. It's like, come on, man.
I don't know. There's a moment in there that I get you what you're saying, but he smiles when he bleeds, almost.
Yeah. Right. It's wow. That answers Batman's question.
I made a huge mistake.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I mean, but like the TV then. By the way, that trucker is 100% like he has raped a woman in every 50 states.
Oh man,
he's the I-70 killer, probably.
It probably is, yeah. But he's a piece of work. But
for real though, he gets his job busted, and he's immediately like, nope, don't want to be a human.
Well, but no, the reason why he doesn't want to be a human anymore is that while he is like huddled in the corner bleeding, and Lois realizing you shouldn't have done this.
Yeah.
Because
and then the Zod and all of them. He sees
them on the TV, and he's like, I knew that this was going on. And she's like, what do you mean? It's like, I heard them, I just didn't listen.
Right.
And he took his eye off of his responsibility, that, and this is where, and Jason, what you missed out on while your internet was coming back was that, I was kind of comparing this a little bit to Spider-Man 2 again, where Spider-Man loses his power because he can't reconcile the person who he is, which is the normal Peter Parker, and the power that he was given. He can't reconcile those two things, and so it creates that struggle where he loses his power. Whereas Superman wants to just be a normal person, but he can't be because he is Superman. He is, so it's like, because he's kind of given this up, and he's kind of underappreciated what his actual responsibility is versus who he really like. He can't figure out how to reconcile being Superman while also having the things that Clark Kent can have.
Right, and he also just wants to use that sweet sex bed in the Fortress of Solitude.
Holy
to plow
shit.
Lois.
Yeah, that little silver cot thing that he had going on there.
I'm surprised she wasn't smoking after. She's smoking everywhere else. Why didn't she smoke?
Oh, well, she's not going to smoke inside somebody else's house. Although I would imagine that would have been hilarious to cut to her like smoking like 3
Lois
cigarettes
Lane
at
would
once.
totally smoke a cigarette in someone else's house.
Yes, she would.
So, yeah, she totally would.
It's her world, man. If Superman had her attitude, there'd be problems.
Well, meanwhile, let's talk about the people who have Lois Lane's attitude.
Dude, this is
and
one of my
Superman's
favorites.
powers.
This is one of my favorite scenes in the movie when they go to the White House. Well, they
Go for
blow
it.
up. Well, first they blow up the
Mount Rushmore. Yeah.
Oh God, that kills me.
which is hilarious.
It's so
Kinda
goofy. I
topical.
love it. Yeah.
Topical right now.
Very
talking about.
topical. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then they go to the White House, and Zod Terrence Stamp is so fucking good in this scene. Like, he's amazing. Like, when he looks down at the eagle on the ground and he says, "I see you are practicing worshiping things that fly,"
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is amazing. And then he tells the guy behind the desk, "Rise before Zod." No, kneel before Zod.
Yeah.
It's so great.
But it's all a ruse. It's the vice president, not.
Or somebody. Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
I think
he's
it's
like,
the
if
vice
you-
president
If you're going to kneel that easily, you don't deserve to
rule people.
basically.
Yeah.
And then the president comes out and says, "If I kneel, will that save people?" And Zod's like, "Well, yeah, starting with you."
It will.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
It's
Right.
so good.
It's
so
but,
good.
But then
Have
he
that-
he has to, he like, doing his TV, like, "Hey, we surrender." Oh, hey, by the way, Superman, help us.
Yeah. There's a scene earlier, and forgive me for dropping out a couple times with this storm, but there was a scene earlier too where somebody sees the Kryptonians in Zod and says, "Oh my God," and he corrects him. He says, "No, Zod."
He says,
Yeah.
"No, it's this scene. It's actually when the
Is it this
president
scene?
kneels. He says, 'Oh God,' and Zod goes, 'Zod.'"
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, because he has no earthly idea
No. No.
of there being a God. He is the God.
Right.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great.
It's awesome.
So then this is where Superman goes back to the fortress, and he's like, trying to like, "Hey, Pops, where you at? Where you at?" Now this is where things get interesting with the Donner cut, because there's a line that just disappears after the first movie, where they say where he talks about being the father becomes, the father becomes the son. Something like that. It's in that big speech where he's talking to Kal-El during the first movie. And in the Donner cut, the last bit of his essence that's been stored, in these crystals or whatever, is transferred to Superman or to Kal-El so he can become Superman again. That's shown so that you can actually see how he gets his power. But when they re-edit it, it's just him looking at that green crystal, which they do at least set up the fact that the green crystal is still there because Lois sits on it.
Lois sits on it. But
Lois sat on it, and previously Lex Luthor was there, and he saw it, I believe.
Yeah.
But it's pretty silly, man, because his mom goes out of her way to tell him that there's no coming back from this. This is irreversible.
Right.
Which I joked when this happened. I said, yeah, Puzo really wrote Superman out of that corner, didn't he?
Yeah, but that's his, Superman's constantly getting written out of corners and stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, I do think that there is I think that some of that, like, hey, this is kind of an irreversible thing if you really, but it was kind of in the self-interest of it's irreversible in the sense that you can't you won't be able to converse with us anymore.
Yeah. Also, and, I know I missed this part of the discussion, but the fact that when he gives up his powers in the Fortress of Solitude, that's like pretty much you just stranded yourself in the Arctic Circle. You know that, right? I mean, you're fucking dead.
Well,
You're
they had a car later, and so
Yeah,
they
right.
went to the
Yeah,
Avis to
Right.
the North Pole
They
Avis.
Lois rented a car. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you just killed yourselves. That was the literal like suicide version of painting yourself into a corner by doing that. Yep.
Well, so
They could have at least Lois could have at least dropped the line. So how are we getting home? You know. Right.
yeah. Well, Enterprise will deliver us a car. So well, we did skip over the fact that the first thing Lex Luthor did when he was busted out of jail by Miss Tessmacher was they went to the North Pole, and she had to hold her bladder for 2 days.
Yeah.
And apparently there's no bathroom in the Fortress of Solitude either. He's just peeing off the side of one of those bottomless.
He's going to pop a squat somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so like Lex Luthor knows things about, knows things about Krypton now because he was playing around with some crystals and learning some shit.
Yeah, he learned some of the stuff that Clark learned in his 12 years in the Fortress of Solitude.
Right. And I think he also learns about Zod. Because he's like, oh, hey, we're great minds think alike or whatever. So he goes to, knowing that now Zod is free and everything, and he seeks him out, and he goes to the White House, and he's like, hey, buddy, let's team up. I got a pretty good brain. You got pretty good brawn. We can do this. Let's, and I can show you, because they know about Superman. But they don't know where to find them. They don't know really anything about Superman.
They also don't even know that he's
right. He doesn't. Right. They don't know that until Luthor shows up and it's like, so I can take you to Superman, and also you can get your revenge on, his dad. It's like, yeah, he's the son of your jailer or whatever.
Right.
And so they go to Metropolis, and so this is. It's a pretty fucking awesome scene because when they show up, of course, it's like an earthquake, and they just come busting through the doors. And then Gene Hackman has his first really great line, which is, "Don't these idiots know how to use a door?"
Yeah, I love that.
You think with all this intelligence or whatever, they know how to use a doorknob,
right?
What I do love about Hackman, about Luthor in this movie, is that he's constantly wavering, like, which horse am I going to pick?
Right. And
he wants to make sure he comes out ahead no matter what happens. So he's sort of like playing both sides, like trying to puppeteer things. Yeah,
and maybe actually you saying that might give me a little bit of, or I can reconcile a point because. They come in and Knob is like tripping over everything, total clumsy nut. But Zod said they're going to kill everyone, but Lois, and Luthor stops them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's like,
it didn't seem within the character for him to do so, but maybe if he was trying to be in Superman's good favor, should Superman win, would be a reason for him not to let them kill everyone.
Right.
Also, it could also be if they're so willing to kill these people on a whim, when is it my turn?
Right.
But I mean, it's his MO too, though. He would kill for no reason, so it felt weird.
But he would if it were to benefit him.
Right. But now to benefit him is to stay alive.
Right.
Yeah. And because these people are like, like
ruler of Australia.
Yeah. So, and when they show up and he's like, hey, so I thought you said Superman would be here. And it's like, well, just give it a second here. And so that's when Superman has one of my favorite lines in all these fucking movies. And that's when he's like, care to step outside, General? Yeah. And it's like, and then Lois says Superman, and Lex says, Oh, thank God!
Thank God!
Get him!
That's the perfect representation of him in this movie, right?
Right.
Because it's like, all right, let's just see where the dust settles. Yeah.
Right, but oh my God, because it was really tense. Right, because they were about to kill people, and then Superman shows up,
Uh-huh.
and he's like, "Oh God, thank God," because they think he's lying to him too, and so they have no reason to keep Luthor.
Right.
It's just
Right.
oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this starts the really badass fight through Metropolis, which
The Marlboro and Coke fight.
Yes.
I'm gonna call it.
So is.
So yeah, but like everybody gets their fucking hits in, man. It's like, and of course the one broad that Lois works with was like, oh my God, they're just as powerful as he is, and so she like pushes that bitch aside.
She is into it, man.
She is into, yeah. She's like, hey, I'm gonna saddle up with whoever wins too.
She's watching what happens like it's primetime television, man. And
Right.
She is into it.
Yeah, and
She
like
had
Lois,
a bet in with her bookie on this one.
Yeah.
yeah. But then, Superman has one benefit. He has one thing that kind of helps even the playing field a little bit, and that is he knows his powers better than they know their powers. So he knows, he knows what can, like when Zod's trying to laser eye the tanker truck, he knows the mirror is good enough to shoot it all back at him, and it's not going to feel good when it comes back. He also has a little bit better control over himself than they do. Although I think the one person who acclimates to their powers faster and better than anyone is Ursa,
Yeah,
because she's actually fucking terrifying in the scene.
she is. She's awesome.
Because she doesn't really care who dies anywhere. Like at least you feel like Zod would say, well, if I don't kill these people, I can use them to my benefit. She'll just like fucking massacre everybody. She doesn't care. She's willing to fucking toss that bus. But one thing that she does, and this is where things get a little too real for me. She grabs that manhole cover, right? And she whips it at Superman, and Superman takes it in the gut and then flies into that car, and it busts that car's windshield. And there's people inside that car, and the woman says inside that car, she's like, "How are we going to pay for it?"
Oh.
It's like, yeah, that's about right. Yay, capitalism. We can't even pay for a broken windshield.
Damn.
Yeah, and it's like, is Superman going to pay for that? Probably not. Is insurance going to pay for that? Well, yeah. Well, and insurance might say, well, it's like you don't have the Kryptonian package.
Right.
It might, but she's still got to pay her deductible,
There's a couple funny things too that happened before that, the manhole cover toss, when Ursa tells Nob to hold Superman, and she swings the thing, and I don't get the citizens in the scene at all, ever.
Well, this is just they just want to watch, and this is just sauce for the goose. It's like it's the extra stuff that Superman has to worry about.
But the way that dude just goes, "Wow, home run!" I'm like, no, man, you'd be fucking running away, you mad person.
I don't know. I kind of want to watch a Kryptonian fight, not a Zack Snyder Kryptonian fight, a Richard Donner / Richard Lester Kryptonian fight.
But then they all take up arms, and they think that they're gonna.
Oh yeah, so they throw the bus at Superman, right? Mm-hmm. And they're like, "Oh man, he's dead."
They killed Superman.
They killed Superman. Get him!
Yeah,
which is great. It's poorly executed, but it's great.
It is great. It is very much like, Metropolis obviously is a stand-in for New York, and it's very New Yorker kind of.
Well, it's Spider-Man 1. It's like, you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us.
It's exactly what it is. Yeah, and it is charming, but yeah, it's not going to work out.
Yeah, so they get blown away, literally blown away. One guy's on the phone still. That guy pisses me
That's
off.
what I don't get the citizens here. Like the guy that comes out of the Kentucky Fried Chicken or whatever restaurant.
Oh, shit, my chicken!
It's like they didn't realize this giant fucking godly fight is happening right outside the restaurant.
Hey, man, the Colonel's got to make his during this, you know.
And that's got to be like Lester versus Donner.
It is. Absolutely is. The comedic beats in that scene, Donner wrote that very straight, or filmed it very straight. And Lester added in those extra people being goofy.
Yeah.
Which is, so that's where you get into that Jekyll and Hyde idea of this movie, where Lester finishes the movie, and the movie is great on its own with some of that goofy stuff that's a little bizarre. But the Donner scenes aren't really much better because they're forever incomplete. You could maybe throw some special effects in there to make them complete, but it doesn't really mean that they're going to necessarily be better because, well, we don't know what those scenes would have been like. It may have been too dark,
right,
in the long run. But so anyway, so Superman runs away like a bitch. No, he's got a plan. He knows that he can, he can go to the Fortress of Solitude.
And Luke, he doesn't want New York to get, or Metropolis to get destroyed.
Right.
He knows they will follow him.
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, because they want to kill the son of Jor-El.
Yeah.
He's going to set a trap.
Yeah. And just so happens that Lex Luthor knows exactly where he's going.
I have Superman's address.
Yep, and because they're going to kill him anyway. They were going to kill Luthor, and he's like, whoa, I got Superman's address. He's constantly bargaining. This is his last play, by the way.
Yep.
He offers nothing more at this point. So they go to the Fortress of Fortress of Solitude, and here in the fortress is where things get really weird. Initially, in the Donner cut, there is no second fight here. They just show up, and he tells Lex, like, hey, we need to get him over here into this thing, into this molecular chamber. And the plan is, or the trap is hatched, and he tosses them, he kills them. And then he goes and does the Earth, the time travel thing, sets it back 3 days. They go back into the Phantom Zone, and then they just are doomed to eternity in hell instead of just dying.
That is a bit muddied, I think. I think I kind of prefer the ending to the theatrical and what Richard Lester did here.
And sure, yeah, I mean, because that's the other thing also. It's like, because also what it does is it takes away, what it does do is it takes away the kiss that wipes Lois's memory, which is a scene that is actually really, really well executed. It's that real quiet kind of, this is the aftermath of all of this crazy stuff.
Yeah, I don't really love that. I don't think that was even necessary. I think they could have kept Lois keeping her memories. And that's not really a Superman power that I know of.
Okay, yeah, but here we go. Superman, this was just, Superman had every single power at one point. Yeah. Because again, how do you make Superman beat the unbeatable thing? Well, just give him something that he can do.
I honestly would have preferred if he had kissed her and was like, we can try this as Superman. Like, or hey, look, we can be celibate. Something. I mean, it just doesn't feel like it was necessary.
Yeah, but it's because the movie, original
sure makes Superman Returns real fucking creepy.
Well, yeah. So the Donner cut
he basically has a virgin birth.
Right, but
or not virgin, but you know what I mean.
Well, but also it's she knows also, like, it didn't really last.
It didn't really last, right?
Right, which makes her extra mad that he leaves. because he thinks that he did whatever.
Right.
But anyway, we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yep.
The Donner cut ends with her being dropped off at her apartment, her saying, well, I guess, I can't ever do anything about and I can't ever be your girlfriend because you're Superman, which is terrible because it's all I want to be is Superman's girlfriend. So much so they named a comic series after that, Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane. But anyway, and then that's when he goes and reverses time. So it's like basically he's not stealing. And when he does that, he goes back home he goes back to work the next day, and both Perry and Lois have deja vu.
Mm-hmm.
But that's so it's like it kind of works, but kind of doesn't. But
yeah, I also him erasing her memory just kind of is skeevy in general, I think.
Well, yeah.
From she can't possibly live the rest of her life with the heartbreak of not being able to be with Superman. It's like, come on, give me a break.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, you have 5 minutes of movie to explain 2 movies worth of problem.
I just feel like for the first time watching Superman 2, I really saw all of its flaws.
Sure.
And whereas Superman 1 is really a complete movie, and a little bit of weathering aside, it's in a lot of ways perfect as a story.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not arguing.
Yeah.
I'm not arguing that because Superman 2 is the problem is that I think the crux of the problem with Superman 2 is learning that there's a different version of that movie that exists.
Mm-hmm.
And because the thing is when the Donner cut was finally released in 2006, a lot of people were like, oh my God, this is so superior. And then about a year later or so, they realized after the shine of it being released finally, and you finally get all of those answers to your questions about there being this other version, they realized afterwards it's like, well, actually the second movie actually is better. The movie as it was is actually better. But the problem is that there's still that flaw, right? There's the flaw of what could have been.
Yeah.
And if we didn't know, in some ways that's kind of my problem with movies anymore, is that everybody knows too much about them now.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything is made the way that it's made now, it's like you never hear about problems behind the set, or if you do hear, or behind the scenes on the set, and if you do hear about it, that normally sinks a movie. Instead of it being just taken for what it is, you look for where the problems are.
Release the Snyder Cut, Jeff.
Fuck off with that.
Snyder Cut. I want to go back.
That's not going to make the movie any fucking better, guys. It's probably going to make it worse. But no, the problem that I have is this, like, you find out that there's this whole other existence of a thing, and it starts to color, and it takes away the shine of what was. And while there is interesting things out there about that other cut or about that other version, sometimes what you got is what you got. And that's, just let it be at that. I mean,
Chuck, you wanted to go back to something. What did you want to go back to?
I did. I wanted to, because there's a line in this movie that I've never in my entire life stopped saying. And it's when Luthor tries to warm up to Superman after they kill. And one thing that does bother me about this in the argument with the Snyder thing is Superman fucking kills Zod when he's powerless in this movie. He just throws him he just fucking destroys him.
We're going to talk about that here in just a second. Because
but after that, so yeah, we'll get to that after. Luthor tries to warm up to him and say, hey, I was trying to help you the whole time. And Superman says, too late, Luthor. Too late.
Yeah.
It's like one of my favorite, I don't know, and I always say it to people when something's too late, just verbatim, I'll just say that. I just love that scene. But
Too late,
Luther.
I mean, we can talk about. So, obviously, Man of Steel is trying to borrow a lot from this movie by having Zod. Zod was not really a super well-known character at the time that this movie, that the original Superman and Superman 2 came out.
I would have assumed that it was created from the movie, but is that not the case?
That's not the case. Zod had existed before.
Zod did, but Ursa and Nob were added, as far as I understand it.
Right, that's true. Because I mean,
Bon and Jovi were added.
Bon and Jovi, yeah. The other two, because like also in Man of Steel, you have a completely different female Kryptonian that's not Ursa. In fact, I don't even think she's given a name. She's just bad lady.
Yeah, evil lady. Voodoo lady.
Yeah.
Witchy woman.
What my biggest problem with Man of Steel is, from start to finish, is the fucking tone. Superman is a character mythologically that should inspire hope.
Mm-hmm.
It should not be a vehicle for you to say, if you have the power, you can just do whatever you want. And Zack Snyder made it that. And the problem is, and there are multiple problems, but at the end of Man of Steel, he drops that fucking satellite out of the sky and tells the army to go get fucked, that he's just going to do what he's going to do, and you're going to have to trust him. That is really bad. That's a really bad ideology. You should, if you're going to have that scene, you should have him tell the army that, I don't mind you spying on me because I have nothing to hide. Not, I'm going to take your fucking satellite and lay it at your feet crumpled and then tell you I'm going to do what I'm going to do. That isn't, in reality, that's an act of war.
What it's doing is it's setting up the Batman versus Superman mode of there. I mean, I agree with you, Jeff, that that's not Superman, but that wasn't the story that Snyder wanted to tell.
No, because Snyder doesn't understand Superman.
That's fair too.
He only understands Superman from an Ayn Rand perspective.
But here's the thing too with the Snyder movies, and I'm honestly just playing devil's advocate here because I don't really care for those movies, but he's examining Superman from a different kind of angle, almost like the Brightburn angle, right? Is what would happen if there's unlimitedly powerful being came to Earth and maybe wasn't as benevolent as we would hope it would be. And again, that's not Superman.
Right. I think it would have played better if there was skepticism of the people and they kind of attacked Superman in a way which made him do things that he normally wouldn't do.
Yeah.
To protect himself.
Right.
In a way. But they did go a little too far. They could have played it a little closer to people driving him to this instead of him just reacting this way naturally.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And, and here's the interesting thing about the tone. I knew from the get-go we were in big trouble when Jonathan Kent was saying, you've got to hide yourself. That's not saying, it's like, you may be here for a purpose, but you got to hide yourself. People will be scared of you. That's setting a bad tone with this character. Jonathan Kent in the first movie was saying, it's like, I know you want to show these people all the things that you can do, but you're not ready yet, or you're not there yet, or you're, that's a different tone.
There's definitely mixed messagings in the Snyder movie too, because like the whole Superman symbol is supposed to, it's retconned to be a symbol of hope, right?
Right.
But yet they don't really allow that to breathe at all.
Right. Yeah. You have no reason to feel hopeful for a guy who runs away from his responsibility.
Yeah.
They played him like a Marvel character. And Superman is not that. Yeah. He is not struggling with who he is. He is who he is. And the struggle is to protect people who can't that he has to protect without going too far. And so all of that tonally leads to him in a situation where you have a murder of bare hands against, by snapping somebody's neck to the point where it practically popped his neck or popped his head off his neck. And that's a different tone than just a kind of a we're just kind of tossing these people over a cliff.
I mean,
I don't know. I don't agree with that.
Well, but there's a cartoonish angle.
I want to hear Chuck out though, because I think that you both have a good point here, and it's how you read it. So go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah, so in the original Superman 2, not Man of Steel, once their powers are reduced, Superman's already won. There's nothing that these people can do to stop him. The act of throwing Zod into a bottomless pit is just plain murderous. Is all it is. He should have taken them and Luthor back to jail. So I think tonally Snyder did the same thing, and maybe it's the setup all the way to the end of the movie that makes the killing of Zod at the end of Man of Steel feel more malicious, because the movie had that kind of tone. But in the end, they're the same thing to me.
So I think where these two arguments I think are both very interesting, because what I do think it comes down to is tone. And because, yes, they're both literal murders, right?
Yep.
If you take them both at face value, they're essentially the same thing. But it does come down to tone, and it comes down to what registers emotionally at that point in time. And the act of snapping Zod's neck at the end of Man of Steel is much more viscerally violent,
right,
than what happens at the end of Superman 2. And I think that makes all the difference.
It does, but however, Superman had far more reason to kill Zod in Man of Steel.
True.
Than he did, and so it's just kind of interesting. It's the way that you lead up to it that makes you read it a certain way.
Absolutely right, because he had powers still, and yeah.
Well,
but honestly, the other thing. Sorry, I'm gonna let you finish. Get
the fuck out of here, Kanye.
The other thing is, if Zod is just as powerful as Superman, then he should not be able to have his neck snapped, even by Superman. So that's just stupid fucking superhero logic.
It is stupid.
There anyway.
Yeah.
Well, what I was going to say is that I think also Man of Steel just was pounding on me at this point, where you're watching Metropolis be like 9/11 times 11.
Yeah.
And it's like you're literally seeing people die.
Yeah.
And that is not something that you generally have seen in superhero movies at that point. Yeah. Like, yes, okay, obviously the Joker was killing people in the 1989 Batman movie with the Joker gas or whatever, right? But there's a cartoonish feel to that. In this,
even in the Avengers, like the Battle of New York, it's
there's no one person you're not seeing people being picked up and then slammed against
they're
the ground.
Dying off screen if they're dying.
Right. If they're dying, and it's like, yes, did Iron Man go and kill a bunch of terrorists when he finally learned how to use his arm? Yeah, but you didn't see him die. You see the building explode or whatever, whatever. But so you're being beaten into this sense, like literally being picked up and beaten against the ground, that this is a terrible world that you do not want to be in, even if there is a Superman. And then for it to all end with that that mano a mano ripping of the neck. And then I was just sitting there, like, I gasped while people around me were clapping.
Right.
And I was fuck off with all of this.
But that, I think, is the problem. Is that the Snyder is conditioning the audience to cheer at that moment, right? And it shouldn't be. Yeah. You shouldn't be cheering at that moment. If if anything, if you want to keep that moment, you need to set it up as a true tragedy, because you've essentially just
Well, everybody always says, but he screams after it. It's like, yeah, but he screams like a fucking maniac after that. It's like, I don't at this point, he might as well just be Doomsday and then go off and snap the next person's
The
neck.
only thing I love about the not love, but like about the Snyder films is how Batman is written in Batman vs Superman to respond to all of that shit, right?
Well, yeah.
Because he kind of responds like you and I, Jeff, about how we feel about all of the shit that went down, right? And Batman's like, I'm not having any of that motherfucking shit.
Batman's the audience. Batman is the audience of people who hated Superman. It's It's actually kind of brilliant if you think about it. But I mean,
brilliant's not a word I would define.
Not how it's executed. The way that they use the hate for the movie.
Yeah.
Was a good move.
I feel like that was shit, people didn't like that. We got to fix it.
Right, but still, it was a smart move, I think.
Yeah.
Whether it worked or not. I need to say one more thing.
Okay.
Just because I was arguing these two endings as being similar, Superman 2 is a far better movie. I like it way more.
Yeah, it is.
I just see a similarity between the endings a little bit.
Sure.
That's all I was trying to say.
I think it's a very good discussion.
Well, it is a very thin line between the two of them. I mean, I'm not going to lie that, he could have just taken him to jail, but also, I mean, again, and this is kind of the curse of knowing that there's that other version where he doesn't end up killing them, and it just reverses everything back to where he just sentences them to hell for eternity.
Yeah, I didn't know that until today, if that makes a difference. I never read about
it. Honestly feels like it's just a little bit half cooked, right? It's like we need to wrap this shit up.
Right.
Yeah.
But and again though, it's like that tone makes me think of Wile E. Coyote being dropped over the edge of a cliff more so than I'm watching a man breathe his last moment, while a super powerful Superman is snapping his neck.
I have always loved Lois Lane, like slugging Ursa, though.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's great. That would have been a great ending, just her punching her and her falling on the ground instead of into it.
to her death.
Well, so I guess technically,
Chuck, there could be marshmallows and pillows.
It's a cartoon. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, maybe there's an Acme mattress down there. Or something.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah. I mean, it is Warner Brothers after all.
It was fog, I mean,
she should have yelled "meep meep" and ran out of there.
Yeah. So technically, Superman only killed one person. Zod Non killed himself.
Yeah.
Lois took care of Ursa. Yeah. And Luther killed no one.
No.
Isn't that a surprise?
Yep. He saved lives in this movie. So
isn't that weird? That's an interesting read too. How you almost need Luther in this movie to save other people.
Yep.
More so than you needed Superman to save the other.
Well, I think you'd also argue that Superman he knew how to play Luther to get
what he needed.
To get what he needed. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But that is still pretty cool when he kneels and he fucking breaks the hand and
it's awesome.
Yeah, but that's
and the music swells and
love it.
It's good stuff. Yay, murder! Off of a cliff. Anyway, just not certain kinds of murder.
Yeah.
Anyway, music is slightly different in this. Ken Thorne came in and adapted Williams' score because supposedly John Williams did see the movie with Richard Lester, and after watching the movie, he said, "I'm not going to do it." People don't know why exactly. It was either he didn't want to get mixed up with the whole problem with Donner. Some people suspect that he does not like Richard Lester. So, yeah. So anyway, Ken Thorne came in. He was a Lester guy. Actually, pretty much everybody who was brought in after Donner's people were fired with Donner were all Lester's people that he worked with in England. So Ken Thorne came in. And really all he did was he just kind of sped up the theme a little bit. But he used pretty much all of it. Maybe added a little bit extra arrangement with different instruments, but that's it. So yeah, I don't think I have anything. I mean, we could talk about all the crazy ass powers that Superman has in the Fortress of Solitude. That's all Silver Age stuff. It's just like, hey, whatever it takes to make Superman look cool and to
Wait,
get him
so
out of this problem.
he used to throw his insignia into cellophane and wrap people up? Because that's the dumbest thing in this movie.
Yeah, that's really dumb.
He has done things. I don't know if it's that exactly, but yeah, he and Batman used to do all sorts of fucking zany shit. Just look up all the different costumes, like the rainbow costume Batman stuff.
I'm gonna trust you on this stuff and not look it up.
That is some goofy 50s sci-fi shit, man. And it's like, that was what comics were reduced to after Wortham fucked them all up.
Right.
So, anyway, yeah, I mean, and then all the extra Supermans, and it's like, oh, this reminds me of the playground at school. Nobody saw that. Nobody thought, hey, that kid's doing some weird shit. Maybe he's an alien. Maybe he's Superboy.
I chose to look past all that because it was also dumb. Even when, Nob and Zod and Ursa were appearing, like disappearing and reappearing, like they didn't do anything. They just showed up there. It's like, are you guys just playing chess and not taking the pieces out? Like, I
do like the sound effects of that. It's like, whoop, 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 whoop. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, this was... Oh, hey, and Superman does get his revenge on the trucker man, too.
Yes, did you like that?
I feel like you didn't really have to, but I feel like, again, that's kind of a cartoonish way of, you need to be taught a lesson, not to be jerky to anybody.
But it's a little out of character for Superman.
It is a little out of character. Although I will say it does bring one thing that sometimes I'll say to people, and that's, oh, I've been working out.
I've been working out.
Yeah.
I love that. It's funny.
It's a Christopher Reeve moment is really the value of that scene more than anything.
Yeah.
So
couldn't leave that thread hanging there, I guess.
No, I mean that I-70 killer guy made him look like a fool, so you got to fix that.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to make a complete stranger look like a fool, would you? Trucker guy?
Well, yeah, and at that point, they aren't complete strangers anymore, so, No. Yeah.
Don't be ridiculous. Oh, no, that's Perfect Strangers.
That's Perfect Strangers, yeah. Yeah, so this movie, did not do quite as well at the box office, but I think did really, really well by this time because it's the VHS era.
Enough that they could announce the third one, knowing that they could announce the third one at the end of it.
Oh yeah, but guess what? That's going to be a lot cheaper than all these other movies that were made previously to the third one. So, there is that. But yeah, so this is. So I guess we're at the end of Superman 2, and I think it's time to get Gus Gorman into the action, and that is Richard Pryor.
Yes,
Brewster.
He was originally written to be Brainiac, but we can talk about that next week.
Yeah, I'm interested in that stuff for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this: I have a demented sense of pleasure when I watch Superman 3 and 4. Those movies suck balls, but they're fucking fun to watch. So,
3 is. 4 was too much for me, but we'll talk about that.
We'll get there.
In a few weeks.
We'll get there.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
But 3, I can at least see what they want to do. They just miss the mark, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it.
We can't forget this time to mention where you can find us.
Yeah, Jason, do that.
FilmSeizure.com, home base. Go there. All the things you can follow and subscribe to are on the website. But you can also follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. We post things there. Check it out. You can also find the podcast on YouTube, on Spotify, TuneIn, Google Podcasts,
Apple Podcasts,
other places probably. If you Google Film Seizure, good chance you'll find us somewhere.
Yeah.
We also have new episodes every Wednesday. So on all of those places, you can find new episodes. On Mondays, Jeff has Monster Mondays. What's coming up, Jeff?
What's coming up? Let's see here. What we got? Let me see. Let's see. This is Superman 2. Next one is Gamera versus Gauss.
Oh, shit.
Wow.
Gamera.
I'm in the middle. September is a Japanese monster movie month, and it's just me mispronouncing a lot of Japanese names.
Good stuff.
I am bad at pronouncing Japanese names.
And Jeff is also still kicking out the jams with 00 Saturdays. So check that out. He talks about a Bond movie and its music every other week.
The World Is Not Enough is this Saturday.
Very cool. And also check Jeff out over at B Movie Enema, where he writes about a bad movie from his alter ego every Friday.
Yeah, my Superman, if you will.
Yeah.
My I think my Kryptonian name is Douchebag. But,
not Duchel.
Or
El Douche.
I hail from the house of Bag. Yeah, this Friday, bmovieanima.com, Attack of the 50-Foot Cheerleader. Fun little movie. Fun little Roger Corman movie. So, yeah.
So, yeah, that's it. Come back next week for Superman 3. Until next week when we go back to Smallville, back to the roots. Oh, speaking of, real quick, because I want to talk about this because of Richard Lester. He and Donner had two very different perspectives with Superman. Donner was a Superman fan. Lester couldn't care less about Superman, and he actually, even though they were friends, he says, it's like, Richard Donner wanted to kind of create this high art, like mythological idea of Superman. All that stuff that we did, or that he did in the first movie with Smallville, I could have never done in a million years, and we're about to find out to see what he would do with Smallville next week.
Sweet.
Cool.
So, until next week when we get off the bus at Smallville, I am Jeff Arbuckle.
I'm Chuck Moore.
I'm Jason Oliver, and you have been listening to Film Seizure.
Superman does whatever a super can. Flies real high in the sky, does some stuff, punches guys. Watch out, here comes a Superman.